Hello and welcome to another episode of Magicians Only, where you're a magician if you're surviving in this world right now. This is an episode for everyone who loves magic, who loves to watch magic, who appreciates it, or maybe wants to learn just a little bit more about what it takes to be a magician. It's not that easy. It's not just about getting on stage and doing tricks. It's about learning magic, practicing, putting an act together, dealing with the public, dealing with marketing, dealing with health. The fact that it's up to you when you do a show, which is a good and a bad thing, but also knowing that if something was to happen to you, there'd be no income coming in. It's not like you've got a business with employees. You are the employee. If there's no you, there's no show. Bit like what Mr. Beast said recently in an interview. He said, he may have a lot of businesses, but if there's no him, there's no show. Pretty stressful, right? When you start looking at it. Yeah. And that's what this episode is all about. Stress, health, and how to find new ventures that make you happy. Stay tuned, kids. It's going to get deep. Magicians Only is sponsored by the greatest magic school in the world, Magic on the Go, at magiconthego.com. Literally, we're almost 1,000 videos. I do all the reading so you don't have to. It's where we rescue the greatest secrets in magic. You can see them being performed. You can see them being explained. You can visualize yourself actually doing the tricks. Not only that, there's stuff for beginners and for professionals and for everyone in between. It really is a wonderful resource. It's an encyclopedia of magic in your pocket. It is Magic on the Go at magiconthego.com. Let's get on with the episode. Hi, how you doing? Let's just stop for a second. I have a question for you. How are you? Seriously, I want to. How are you? How's your mental health these days? You know, as a person who is an entertainer, I can tell you, having seen the business, all kinds of elements of our business change recently, I can only imagine how you're feeling. Doesn't matter if you're a magician or an actor or you're in some other form of business. I know that everyone is feeling it right now. Mental health is a super important thing. It's so great that these days we can talk about it without stigma. When I was a kid, if you brought up going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or that you had some anxiety or mental health issues, you were labeled as crazy. Now we all know that mental health can be caused by so many things, whether it's diet, metabolism, your environment, your work. There's so many things. So please take care of yourself first. Your mental health has to be at the top of your life pyramid before anything else. Mental health, physical health, those two things. I know I'm being very serious at the beginning of this episode. It's just because I'm seeing some friends of mine who are going downhill, and it's really sad. And I have also felt that anxiety and a little bit of depression with what's going on in the world and what's going on in the business. As an actor, as a magician, we are interfacing with people, with the public on a regular basis. So do yourself a favor. I know that you might be the kind of person like me who likes to put everyone else first. You have to put yourself first. You have to put your mental health first. Make sure that you're okay. It's a bit like the version of when you're on an airplane and they go through kind of all the rules, and they tell you that when the oxygen mask drops, you have to put it on yourself first before you put it on anyone else. That's life. Mental health is putting on the oxygen mask on yourself. Mental health is putting that oxygen mask on you first. I love you guys. I want you to be here with me for a long time. So take care of yourself, yeah? I think one of the hardest things as an entertainer, or just as a human being who has a job, is to stay relevant, to stay necessary for your work. And in that respect, I think we always have to be looking for new ways to apply our skills. Same goes for magicians. So the way I think about magic is, when you look at the history of places to perform, obviously street magic has always been there. It has always been there. I talked before about illusionists and parlor performers and all of those live versions of entertainment over the centuries. And now we looked at Instagram and YouTube, and it's difficult to be a performer on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok because people like to take apart your videos. People like to expose the tricks that you do, so you can work hard on putting together a magic trick to entertain people. And so, some arsehole's going to come across and say, "But this is how it's done," completely missing the point. And so this is a problem. When I was in Hollywood in the 1990s, the biggest moneymaker for me at the time was the private party scene, whether it was bar mitzvahs, parties in millionaires' mansions, on yachts, being flown all over the world to perform for people. These were the high ticket items. Then there were the trade show performers, and then there was the corporate events, and then there were places where you could have a good income. But the problem was that you were always at the whim of somebody wanting to hire you, and that can come and go depending upon many factors. So now I look at where we are. There are places that will hire magicians, but they don't pay very well. That what you have to understand, it might seem like a big paycheck at the time, but for those who are not in entertainment, let me just tell you, sometimes we go months without work in order to get that one paying gig, right? So when you start amortizing that money over the period of time in which you've worked on your show and written the material and practiced it and rehearsed it and tried to market it and go after the gigs and the money, suddenly it's not so much money anymore. So there are those places that will hire magicians that don't pay very well, even though they make a lot of money. And I'm tired of it. It's not fair. Magicians, entertainers, all of us, no matter what you do for a living, we all deserve to be paid fairly and well. So I was thinking about this and I'm like, what is the deal? What can magicians do now? What's next? What can be relevant? And we are in the golden age of magic as far as the public is concerned. People love it. To me, there are two things you can do, right? That you can create your own magic venue, which could be that you own the building, build a theater, market it, and sell tickets, and you take all of the money. Or you could convince a venue to let you have a room and you can work some kind of profit share deal, or you can just rent a theater and completely four-wall, what's called four-walling, which is what they do in Vegas now, completely four-wall a show. Four-walling means that you take on all of that responsibility. You take on all of that possible debt. I mean, I feel like a bloody dinosaur when I say this, but I remember a time, a long time ago. Sorry, I lost something in my throat. I remember a time when you used to get paid to do a gig, when you were paid to do your work, when you had a job with a corporation and a business, and they would pay you to do a show. They would pay you to make a movie, to make a film, to write it, to edit it. They would pay all these people to create the content. They would pay you, that you'd have to pay taxes on that money. Maybe you had a 401k that was built into the business. Maybe you had healthcare. All of these things were built into the work that you did, right? And look at where we are now. Talk about magic. They have tricked you into doing all the work for free. And we're doing it. We're doing it. It's amazing. We're creating content on the possibility that one of our videos that we put money into, that we might get up online, one of those videos might get enough likes for us to get enough money from it. Do we get a salary? No. Do we get healthcare? No. Do we get pension paid? No, absolutely not. All the expenses come out of your pocket. You're taking 100% of the risk. You're four-walling videos, you're four-walling online content, you're four-walling Instagram. And these corporations have made us think that have got us doing this because of the possibility that we could become one of these outliers who makes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, like Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is incredible. I love Mr. Beast. You have to be Mr. Beast in order to have that kind of success. His work ethic, his absolute drive and dedication is incredible. Hashtag Mr. Beast for president. But for the rest of us who aren't Mr. Beast, how do you feel about the fact that these multi-billion-dollar corporations have tricked most people into working for free? Please like, share, and subscribe. So what do? We pivot. We own it. We start to four-wall our future. Four-wall a venue. You can rent a theater. Now, I know someone who does it, and he succeeds more than he fails, but he did tell me that last year he lost a lot of money because people just weren't going out and buying tickets. It's a crapshoot. It's a gamble. The only way that you can make money as a performer where it's not going to cost you money is to street perform. Now, Magic on the Go, we do have this masterclass on street performing, and Keith Fields on 2 of the episodes here so far on Magicians Only has given amazing tips on street performing, but it takes a certain kind of personality to be able to go out and entertain a crowd and pull a crowd and get them to open up their pocketbooks and give you the money that you deserve. But knowing that you have that, it's so worth, isn't it? It's so worth putting together a 25-minute street act that you can do wherever you are in the world and just having that with you. So if you get stuck, if you run out of money in Spain, you know what I mean? If you end up losing all your luggage in Germany or in America, guess what? You can go do a street show. Hopefully you can get one done before the cops move you on. But I do think that having that skill as a survival mechanism is important. So number one. Number two, talk to a theater about four-walling a show there. What it usually means is you have to rent the theater. You have to give them also a percentage of the tickets. If you sell merchandise, that theater will take a percentage of the merchandise as well. They may or may not help you market it. One of the things that's important is to ask the theater if you can have access to their mailing list, or if they can send out ads for your show to their membership. Because the one thing that most theaters will have is a giant membership database of emails. And that is one of the most important things. There's no point in doing a theater if you can't access their or get to use their email database. And then what you're going to have to find out is whether the theater is a union theater or a non-union theater. If it's a union theater, now you've got to find out exactly when you can load in and when you need to be loaded out after the show by, so that the stage crew don't go into overtime. This is a huge thing. I know a few people who have been screwed badly because they did their show, they went and signed autographs, they were doing the merch that the theater was making a percentage of, and they were a little late in loading out their props into the car, and now they had to pay everybody golden time. So you need to be truly aware of that. You can really help yourself by having your lighting cues, your sound cues, and your stage cues if you need to use anybody from the theater staff to kind of open or close curtains or help you move equipment. You need to have all that stuff written out that you will then send to the theater in advance. We call it the tech rider with the lighting cues, the sound cues. Although I highly recommend you work the sound. If you're going to four-wall a theater, I think you're better off working the sound alone. Do it yourself off a button. IQ Pro Show Control, or any of the guys out there who offer that kind of a service are super valuable. I have over 60 different sound cues in my 90-minute show, maybe more actually, audio and visual. And so I need to operate those myself because there's no way that I have time to teach a stranger when to press the button. Timing is everything when it comes to shows. And so the only thing they have to do is lighting. Now, what I will try to do is have 5 different lighting setups, a full wash, kind of a moodier lighting setup to the left-hand side, stage left, a moodier lighting setup, stage right, a pin spot blackout kind of setup in the center of the stage, and a center stage spotlight again, but with kind of a moodier light behind it. So I've got 5 different variations. That's all that they have to set up for me. And of course, blackout. You want to be able to black out whenever you snap your fingers. That's always very dramatic. So it's just something to think about. That makes life easy. You know exactly the lighting that you're going to ask the theater to do is relatively simple. It's also easy to teach them when you show up for your tech rehearsal, and you are going to do a tech rehearsal. Please don't do that thing where people rehearse on stage at the last minute. Make sure you know exactly what you're doing. You'll save yourself a lot of money. So that's that. Now we come to the idea of getting your own venue. In an upcoming episode of this podcast, I will be interviewing on camera, this time, Bill Abbott. Bill has his own theater in Florida. He's been doing it for a long time, and he knows how to run his own theater inside and out. I've got him to spill the beans. He's going to talk about how he got the venue, how he talks to the owner, the kind of deals that can be made, the experiences that you need to provide for your clients for your customers and your audience in order to charge a higher ticket price that makes it worthwhile. I think this is the way to go, you guys. You cannot rely on people coming to you with high ticket gigs. You have to have this regular show on a weekly basis. And then Bill gives some amazing tips at the end of the interview where he tells us how he converts those shows into private shows. It's pretty amazing. I'm not sure why he told us everything he did. I think it all kind of came out and he needed to talk to someone like a good psychologist, so like a good psychiatrist. But I got all the information. He shared it with us. So look out for that new upcoming episode of Magicians Only where we interview Bill Abbott on all of that good stuff. I will say this. You have to get off your ass and onto your feet, and you have to go knocking on doors. You have to send out packages to the venues that you want to work at, but the venues that you want to be happy to work at. This is one of the most important things, okay? So yeah, you can have a restaurant gig and do children's birthday parties. That's absolutely fine. I know a lot of people who make a lot of money on children's birthday parties, and children will always be having birthday parties. But if you're not a kid's birthday party magician, then you need to get that street show in your pocket so you always have it for extra cash. And you need to find a venue in your town, figure out who it is you're going to be marketing to, what your price point is. We do talk to Bill about that. And are you going to be marketing to tourists or locals? I think you get a better chance of longevity if you market to the tourism, in which case you're going to want all of those online places like Yelp or TripAdvisor. These are the places that you have to finesse. You have to find ways of getting your audiences to give you 5-star reviews, because that is what you will need to bring that tourist dollar in. That's what you need in order to get your show out there. Super important. Because let's face it, those billion-dollar corporations are just going to find new ways of getting you to do all the work for free. I mean, no health care, no insurance, nothing. You're doing it for free on the possibility that you might get paid. At least this way, if you are successful, you will make all the money yourself and they won't get a piece of it. I mean, think about that. You know, even when you put your videos up there and they don't do that well, they still have ads running. They still have views. They still create content. You are creating content for their business. Just something to think about. Don't get me wrong, I will be doing stuff online, but it will be in order to promote something physical that I'm actually doing, that I will actually own. Or even better, as a way of sharing thoughts, connecting with the world, and most importantly, connecting with you, as opposed to just feeding the beast. Not Mr. Beast. He's pretty well fed. Hashtag Mr. Beast for president. I think it's really good for your mental health to have your own place. I think it's really good for your self-esteem and your confidence to have your own place to perform. It is somewhere that you can learn your craft, somewhere that you can build new material, somewhere that is a landing site for you, somewhere to have your feet planted on the ground that you control, that you know on a daily basis you're responsible for. The other thing I want to talk to you about that has to do with mental health is honestly how to be successful. You know, we as entertainers, we as human beings, you know, we suffer from various forms of guilt. Yeah. So there is, obviously there's guilt of failure. There's guilt of success. And we have magic guilt as magicians. I don't know if you know this, but quite often magicians are very guilty when they're deceiving you. They're very guilty, especially when they come to do that little extra move that enables them to get away with the trick. So sometimes you can see how a magician does a trick when they seize up, when they look guilty, when their eyes dart all over the place, when they pause and start sweating on their forehead. Yeah, sometimes it's that obvious. That kind of magic guilt is a very, very real thing. Imposter syndrome is a huge one. But I think if anything I can do to help you about imposter syndrome is something I heard recently, which was, look, you may want to be the next Copperfield. You may want to be the next David Blaine. And then you feel like you're not achieving what you want to achieve. And people will think that you're no David Blaine, and they'll think that you're no Copperfield, and they'll think that you're no Darren Brown. But the reality is someone already did that. Somebody was already Copperfield. Somebody was already Blaine. You will suffer if you try and compare yourself to anyone that you think is a big success. So what you need to do is to find who you are and be the new you. believe in you. Look at Mr. Beast. Oh my God, no one believed in him. Everybody thought he was nuts to want to do the things that he did. And he proved every single one of them wrong. Hashtag Mr. Beast for president. That guy's an inspiration. But when you have success, I want to talk about success for a second because it comes in many different forms, okay? Sometimes just making a living at the thing that you love doing is success. Sometimes making gazillions of dollars is success. And there's a number of things that will happen, and this is kind of the thing that happened to me when I became successful as an actor. And I remember when I got my second television series, which was called Crossing Jordan. Thank you, hashtag Nigel. And Crossing Jordan was a big change for me because it was a network television crime drama. I was a regular character and I was on television every week. I'll never forget it. More money for that one episode than I made the entire previous year. Now, I tell you this because there are things that come with success. First of all, you're going to find out who your friends are, and they're going to divide into various categories. There are going to be people who are just so happy for you. They were always rooting for you. They knew you could do it, and they're just bowled over. Those people, I'm sad to say, are few and far between. There's going to be people who are jealous. Jealousy and envy is a bitch. Those people can surface in many different ways. I remember the phrase I used to hear a lot from the jealous people was, don't get too big for your boots. Don't go changing. You know, it was like, you're going to be a star and you're going to forget about us little people. Those kinds of comments are really designed to control you and make you feel bad about your success. Well, fuck that. If you're successful, embrace it, own it, and say, yes, I deserve to be successful. They're going to say to you, don't go changing. Don't change who you are. Otherwise, it's going to go to your head. But here's the reality. When you're successful, you have to change. I'll repeat that. When you're successful, you have to change because you are no longer the person that the people knew. Maybe your heart is, maybe as a human being, yes, you are still that person, but you're successful now. And that means that you are a target. You're a target for a number of people, okay? You're a target for jealous people that want to bring you down because they can't stand the idea that you were successful and they won't. You're a target for people who want something from you. Blackmail, bribery. They want to sell you drugs. They want to use you to get to the casting director. They want to use you to get a job on their show. They want to use you to date so that they can then turn around and say it was a crappy date and sue you and get money in that respect. You become a target and you now have to protect yourself as if you are an entity because that's what you've become. You become an entity and you become a target. Years ago, when I did the Disney series, I'm in the band. One of the things that we all had to do one weekend was what I politely call the Disney brainwashing weekend. Now, this, I say that sarcastically. I actually think this was an absolutely brilliant move. Everyone who worked on a Disney series, every actor, and a lot of them were kids and their parents and the adults, of course, we all spent a weekend at the Disney studios, and we all sat in this room while various members of the Disney Corporation came in to let us know what it was to be Disney. Now, they would say, we're not telling you what to do, we're not telling you how to behave. But you are now working for one of the most successful companies in the world that has an amazing reach and means something to a lot of people. And we represent something. We represent family. We represent what's good. There are things that they went down this list and they said, we're not telling you how to behave in public. We would just prefer you behave well. They then did this amazing thing with the kids. This guy got up to give a speech and he looked really, really scuzzy. And he gets up and he's like, you might not know me, but I'm the head of security here right now. And he said, I've got to talk to you about the fact that you kids, especially your targets, there are going to be very bad people out there who want stuff from you. All right. I'm not going to say what it is, but they want stuff from you. They want to do bad things to you. They want you. And now you need to be protective of who you are. And I'm talking to you parents as well as you kids. And now at this point, he went around the room and he talked to various kids and he said, he talked to one little kid, she was like 10. He says, you've been online this weekend and you were talking to Happy Boy 13, right? Yeah, I'm Happy Boy 13. And we all had shivers go up. I mean, it was brilliant. And then he went around the room and had some kind of communication with each of those kids, or had been able to get information from stuff that they posted. He knew that one kid's parents was out of town because he posted that he was having a party at his house. He knew where one kid lived because they hadn't taken the geolocation off of the photographs. I mean, it was amazing. It was terrifying and it was brilliant. And by the end of that, every parent and every kid understood that they could never be the same again. So when you're successful, be who you are at core. Never let that change. Be a kind person, be a good person, but understand that you now need to protect the entity, protect the product. You are the product. And of course, in protecting yourself, you're also protecting your family. There could be people that want to come after your kids. There could be human traffickers that want to locate you. You don't know. So never be guilty about being successful. I suffered from success guilt for so long. I mean, I would go out with friends and I would insist on paying the bill because I could. I would insist on buying things for people that they needed or paying somebody's rent because I could. There were some friends who refused to take that, who refused to let me do that. And I appreciate that more than they know. Not because I needed to keep that money, but because I understood what they were saying. So it's okay to change. It's okay to protect yourself. Have a look. You'll see people will reveal their true colors. You'll be able to, I mean, I used to go on dates. I remember when I was in a television series and I became single and I would go on a date, and I swear some of my dates could not keep their real motives from coming out. Even on the first date, before we got to dessert, I would get questions like, so can I meet the producers of your show? Or any chance you can get me a role on your show? This stuff would actually come out. Don't be guilty because you're successful. Be proud. If people are angry or they're jealous, just understand that means that they're not happy for you, because it's all energy. It's all energy. Look, I'm not a psychologist, right? I just live my life with my brain and my experiences. Obviously, that is success guilt, which is a little bit different to fear of success. Fear of success I've seen with a lot of people, especially in the acting business. People who have opportunities who kind of deliberately blow them because they're afraid of getting the actual part and having to step up. Notice that in yourself. Have a look and see is there part of you that is sabotaging your success? And also, is there someone around you, and I experienced this, who is doing their best to sabotage your success before you become successful? You're working hard at something and there's just, it's not quite working out. Is it not working out because some of the people around you are sabotaging you in one way or another? They could be sabotaging you by talking bad about you, or by maybe having conversations or insisting on talking to the people you want to do business with as your manager or whatever, like behind your back, behind the scenes, setting the wrong tone, being harsh. Like, there are people out there who don't want you to succeed. And it's not because they don't like you. It's because, in my mind, I think that they're afraid of losing you. And they think that if you become successful, you'll leave them in the dirt. And so the only way that they can control you is by making sure you don't become successful. I have unfortunately had people like that in my life. I didn't see it for the longest time, and I'm bringing it to your attention right now so that you, hopefully, can be aware of this. Who's sabotaging you? Are there people out there who just don't want you to succeed? And again, listen, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist, right? This is just my observations from being someone who has had nothing, had everything, lost it all, come back again. I mean, life is a roller coaster. Work is a roller coaster. If it was a straight line, it would be boring, right? Just know that. But I want you to be aware of these things. Embrace life. Embrace your success on and off stage. One of the things I always used to do when I went to an audition, and I still do it occasionally now, is to have something planned after the audition, especially if it's an important audition. I would, because I had an annual pass to Disneyland and Universal Studios. So the great thing was I would go to an audition, rip up the sides, throw them in the trash, and go do the Indiana Jones ride and Space Mountain. Or I would go do Back to the Future. Remember that? Back to the Future, the ride. I would just go do something to kind of shake it off and not worry. I would never call my agent and say, did you hear anything yet? Did you hear anything? Did you hear anything yet? If they want you, they'll call. It's okay to be hopeful and want the best, but it's really much healthier. You go into that audition, that meeting, that job interview, you do the best you can at that given moment in time. That's the moment in your life that's what you could do, and that's all you can do. So you embrace it. That's the way it went. Yes, I said the things I said, and hopefully they'll see that I'm great. But now I'm going to move on to something else that's fun, so that you can always equate those tough moments, auditions, job interviews, speeches, with fun after moments, after parties. Does that make sense? I also know people who feel guilty for being successful during a show. You know, you're on stage, you're doing the bit, something happens. Maybe you drop a prop, or someone in the audience or someone on stage says something that's really amazingly funny. The show makes a turn. Everything becomes hilarious for a moment. Now, you kind of know you didn't earn that. You kind of know that moment was really brought to you courtesy of a complete stranger. And you also know you'll probably never get that again. But you have to accept it. A lot of people are like, yeah, well, that was him. That was the person from the audience. That was the one-liner. That was the thing that went wrong that ended up being hilarious. I can't really take credit for that. Listen, you brought all of those moments together for that thing to happen. You need to embrace your success. Enjoy it. Lean into it. Don't be guilty because you got a laugh off of something somebody said, or because somebody else created an amazing moment in your show for you. I had a moment in my show where I was doing a very serious monologue, and a spectator from the audience was sitting at a table. He dropped some cards on the floor. As I was doing the monologue, he bent over to pick up the cards, and he was a large man, and he had a plumber's crack. His ass was sticking out the back of his pants. I mean, you want to talk butt cleavage. It was like if Pamela Anderson had butt cleavage, this is what happened. Of course that distracted the audience. Of course that got their attention. Did it ruin the moment of the monologue? Absolutely. Was it the funniest thing that happened all night long? Yes. Did I pick a card up and try and throw it at him to get it between his butt cracks? No comment. I did think about it. I pretended like I was going to, but no, I didn't, because I think I could probably get sued if I did that. But the point is this. I love that happened. It changed the show. That show will never be the same again for those people, but everyone leaned in a little bit because everyone knew that what they were seeing that night was original, was alive, was capable of change, and was capable of morphing in a myriad of directions. Same goes for when you are authentically you and you are genuinely yourself in whatever you do. When you're not going by a fully memorized script, when you're bouncing on the waves of life, when you're skipping across that ocean of life like a little rock skipping across the water, anything can happen at any point. And I think that is what makes an exciting person, somebody who is willing to take those risks, somebody who's also willing to embrace the changes that get thrown. Don't be so rigid. Don't be so stuck in the way that it's always been. There's a saying, right? That the most dangerous words in the world are, we've always done it this way. I remember there was a lady in one show who looked very harsh when she sat down in the front row, and it took a while for her to warm up and enjoy the show. And I remember I was really was pissing me off. The show was doing well, and it was, all I could think about was the one lady who didn't seem to be laughing at anything. Anyway, at the end of the show, she was finally laughing and enjoying herself. So I'm doing photographs and meet and greet after the show. She comes up to me. She says, "I just want to let you know, young man." She said, I hate magic. I've never enjoyed a magic show. But I've had a lot of death in my family this last year, and these last couple of weeks especially have been really shit. And my daughter thought, I'm going to take you out to a magic show. And I was like, I don't want to go to a magic show. And she said, well, it was you, Steve Valentine. And I know you from telly, so I thought I'd give it a shot. We'd just come out. I've got to tell you, I had the best time. I enjoyed myself so much. I just want to thank you. Thank you for doing that show. Because for the last 90 minutes, I didn't think about the shit that's going on in my life. It was a beautiful moment, right? And I will be saying this a lot. over all of these episodes, just remember that always when it comes to our lives, when it comes to our jobs and our work, it's not really about us. It's about the people we meet along the way. I did a TV series called I'm in the Band where I played a rock star. Do you know how many people, young people in their 20s, have come up to me to say that was a seminal program for them, that they got into rock music because of that show? When I did Crossing Jordan, I played a criminologist. I'll never forget getting a letter from a lady. Yeah, this is back when they did letters. I got this letter from a lady who said that her daughter was somewhat suicidal, was very depressed, didn't fit in at school, didn't fit in anywhere, and that she had watched Crossing Jordan, saw that my character, who was kind of a goth dude with long hair and earrings, was working at the coroner's office in the show, realized that that was something that she could do without any problem, went into training, and that's what she does now, and she has a whole career, and she couldn't be happier. You just don't know how your life is going to affect someone. Seriously though, how can you be guilty about your success when your success is definitely going to help someone somewhere? That makes it worthwhile, right? That's why you should embrace it. Be yourself. Love yourself. Take care of yourself. I love you. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. Now it's time for a little Past Masters.
Past Masters.
We've got to have a little bit of this. This got to be a very deep episode, didn't it? Sorry about that. So there you go. You see, I'm having guilt. I'm having deep guilt. Oh my God, Valentine can actually think for himself. We thought he was just an idiot actor. You could be right on both counts. Listen, I was recently reading about this guy, Jack Ladair. Jack Ladair was a music hall performer, variety stage performer back in the early 1900s. Very successful magician, did a lot of his own routines to the point where he was one of the first people I'm aware of who would actually sell the rights to his routines or buy exclusive rights from a creator to be the only person doing a certain routine on the stage. A lot of the routines that he did, the color-changing handkerchiefs, Oscar the Duck, the egg and the handkerchief, the celebrity trick, the color-changing thimbles, the miser's dream, the rice and the fountain, the rising cards, the card and the cigarette, the pound note and the 3 candles. A lot of the tricks that he did were well-known even now. However, his presentations were somewhat original. He wrote a book called Tricks of a Trooper, and it was published by a chap called Goodliff, way back in the day. Let me see, when was it published? I actually have the book in my hands right now. It was first published in December of 1946, so he'd already had a massive career at that point. The thing with Jack Ladair was he's the kind of performer that I love. He's an absolute old pro, which means that he has tips upon tips. So what's really important about the stuff in this book was not kind of the tricks that he's talking about, but the tips and the things he learned while doing them. And there was a trick that he did called card and the cigarette. Card and the cigarette being card is chosen, ripped up into pieces. Maybe it's put in an envelope, thrown down onto the floor. And one of those pieces, of course, is chosen and selected and held onto by a member of the audience. And then you borrow a cigarette, you light the cigarette, suddenly you start choking. They open up the envelope on the floor and they find that the pieces of the card are no longer there. The envelope is full of tobacco. When you look back at your cigarette, you realize there's something strange about it. You tear off the cigarette paper and there, rolled up inside the borrowed cigarette, is the chosen card that's not only there, but it's restored into one piece, except, of course, for a corner that matches the corner the spectator has been holding the whole time. It's a classic trick. If you look online, a magician by the name of David Nixon, who was famous for performing his version of that. In fact, on Magic on the Go, I have an entire teach-in talking about his exact method and routine, which is a lot different to the one that Jack Ladair did back in the day. The thing that I really loved about his write-up on the card and the cigarette was not how it was done, but when he talked about all the crazy things that happened and things that would happen to him while he was performing the trick. And I want to talk about this with you right now. There's a thing that magicians do. Have you ever seen it where they ask you to take a card, and let's say you take the ace of spades, and they go, don't take the ace of spades, and you chose the ace of spades. So the card goes back in the deck, and they'll have you choose another card. And no matter what you do, you can't help but choose the ace of spades. And this goes on and on and on. It's a really funny moment. And in the end, they'll give you the ace of spades and or throw it on the ground and have you put your foot on it. Then you take another card and it's still the ace of spades and the card underneath your foot is no longer the ace of spades. Well, this trick has many, many different ways of doing it, many, many methods. There's a technique involved that I'm just going to, for the sake of keeping certain secrets secret, let's just call it the classic. Magicians know what I'm talking about. So the classic is the way in which I get you to take the same card over and over again. I want to read to you some of the things that happened to Jack Ladair while trying to do the classic.
Past Masters.
Okay, things that have happened to me while doing this trick, written by Jack Ladair. I've had some experiences with this trick that may be of interest to my readers. So many people are wise to the wiles of conjurers who ask them to select a card. Others, more awkward and not sporty, do their utmost to queer the conjurer by trying to get a card from another part of the pack. The top card is frequently sought after. This is easily overcome by letting the awkward cuss retain the card that he's chosen while proceeding to another and more helpful person. In musical work, which is theatre work, where one is timed to the minute. Oh yeah, I have to just say, by the way, when you were working in the music halls back in the day, you had an 8-minute spot. You didn't go over 8 minutes. You had to do exactly 8 minutes. If you did under 8 minutes, you didn't get paid. If you went over, you wouldn't be asked back. That's why their acts had to be timed to the second. So this is very important. Anyway, back to Jack. In musical work where one is timed to a minute, it is not possible to run around trying to force a particular card. To combat this, I usually have a few duplicate cards in the pack to work on. With this safeguard, one does not feel too uneasy if a card is taken 1 or 2 away from the desired one. One method I've adopted is to have a short duplicate about the center of the pack and others being on top. And then when I make the pass to bring the top to the center, I use the short card to find the center. Thus, a short card, a duplicate, is brought to the top. Then I have a few chances of getting it away. It simply means a pack of short cards if one wants to work the trick 52 times. I remember presenting this trick at the New Empire in Cardiff on one occasion when an amusing incident occurred. The theatre, as some of my readers will recall, has a most elaborate run-out from the stage to the auditorium, which played an important part in the trick. The spectator I approached proved to be one of those awkward persons that conjurers meet when trying to classic a card. In this case, he tried every way he knew to avoid having his choice made for him, even to the extent of trying to snatch the pack from my hands. Thinking quickly, I spread the cards out on the platform of the run-out and asked the awkward spectator to take any one he wished. He did so, and a quick glance through my pack enabled me to bring the card I wanted him to select to the top of the pack. Now, this would have enabled me to classic the desired card on a more obliging member of the audience, but noticing that my opponent had not yet looked at his card, I held my hand out, and for some unknown reason, he handed it back without a murmur. Possibly he felt nervous and defeated, so I asked him, did he remember the name of the card? And while speaking, I made the change. He replied, no. So I answered that the idea was that he should take a card and remember its name. He took the card back from me, looked at it, and then proceeded to tear it up as I instructed, and the trick went on as usual. Now, some of the audience who witnessed the incident couldn't restrain from chuckling when the trick was finished. Had the awkward customer looked at the card, of course I would have had to perform some other small trick with it. Incidentally, if one is stuck, one could, after having performed the trick, go to the spectator, ask him to tear his card into 2, then to 4, then to 8, then to 16 pieces, and conclude by saying, well, that card is not much use to us now, is it? So you may as well throw it away. I also have a gag where you have somebody tear up the card and then throw the pieces in the air, and then you just say, happy birthday. Whilst on the subject of classicking, I'm replacing the word, by the way, with the word classic. I cannot refrain from mentioning an incident which occurred on my journey from South Africa. We, that is, several of the artistes on board the boat, were nearing home, and we were feeling either bored or homesick. To enliven the proceedings, I suggested a little party all to ourselves. Spirits being only 7 shillings and 6pence per bottle at the time, we indulged in a few glasses and the party became a merrier and happier one. After we had a few songs, I got out a pack of cards and I classicked it several times on Florence Oldham, the now well-known star of radio and the music hall. There was a comedian of very small stature who sat on a chair dangling his legs, and he said, rather contemptuously, I fear, "Oh, it's all done by forcing." I ignored him and went on with a few more tricks. Finally, I brought the card that Miss Oldham had been selecting to the top of the pack, and turning to the comic, I asked him to pick a card. He at once grabbed the top card and found to his surprise that it was the same card that I had been playing tricks with on Miss Oldham. He threw the card down in disgust and never bothered me again. I had taken what was 1,000,000 to 1 chance on him grabbing that top card, and it had come off. It was a sweet revenge for his previous attempt. Yeah, there is something very psychic about doing this kind of trick. And I'm not just saying that to try and throw people who are non-magicians, to throw you muggles off the track. But there is, when you do this kind of a trick for people, there is a connection that you make with the person, and there's almost a vibe, a feeling, a psychology. You kind of know what they're going to do next. Now, I'm not really a big believer in the psychic thing. It's probably reading a whole bunch of minor micro cues, but you do kind of vibe with the person when you're doing this trick. It is a very, very strange, almost truly magical thing. And there are times when you get into this groove and you can just do it over and over and over again, and you start amazing even yourself. Okay, back to Jack. On another occasion, when I had classicked a card and held the pieces in my hand, I found to my horror that it was a picture card, whereas the one I had intended to classic was a small value spot card. To quote the late Sid Walker, "What would you do, chums?" Well, when I asked for the name of the card, the spectator gave it, but it was not the one that I'd wished to classic. So I opened the card with its back to the audience. I showed that a piece was missing. I went to the spectator and showed him that it fitted. I handed the card back to him with a whispered, "Sorry, a slight mistake." Appealed to know if the piece fitted, and it did. He agreed, and I retired to splendid applause. One consolation to bear in mind is this. Maybe only 1 or 2 people near the spectator who was assisting me may have noticed that something had gone wrong. The remainder of the audience, possibly 2,000 people, did not know. As a conjurer once said to me when speaking of audiences as a whole, what do they know about magic? As far as the cigarette trick goes, I have had exploding cigarettes thrown up to me, and being somewhat ignorant of this at the time, they did not have the desired effect. Looking back, I can well imagine the expectancy of the donors of such practical jokes waiting for something which didn't happen. On one particular occasion, I smoked one of those cigarettes on my way home. I must say I did have the best laugh at the time, as no doubt the Joker was still sitting in the theatre wondering why nothing had happened. Just one further point, with only a few favourite brands of cigarettes going the rounds right now. If I found that mine coincided with theirs, I always managed to drop the cigarette paper at their feet when I tore it off. More than once, I've seen them bend down and pick it up for closer examination. Past Masters! Fun little stories right there from Jack Ladair. There's a very important point in that, and that is that the audience really didn't know what was going on. And you can bluff your way through a lot in life and in magic if you just have a little confidence and you act like that was what you meant to do. At the same time, I always say that embracing a mistake or leaning into something that goes awry is often a very powerful move. But remember that the most powerful tool a magician has is the element of surprise. You, the audience, has no idea what's about to happen. So if the trick goes one way, go that way. I was doing a show the other day where I was supposed to count off, I had somebody yell out a number, and I was just going to cut that amount of cards off the top of the pack. And it was a big build-up too. There was supposed to be 26 cards. When they counted them, there was only 22. Now, I'd done a lot of magic at that point. The audience was looking at me with a knowing look as if to say, we know he's up to something. The idea that I'd screwed up didn't even enter their minds. What would you do, chums? Well, I'll tell you what I did. I reached into my pocket and I said, that's because the other 4 cards are over here in my pocket. And the trick concluded successfully, but I mean, it really made no sense whatsoever. The reason that I bring all of this up, the reason that I talk about pivoting, the reason that I talk about where are we going to perform next, the reason that I talk about finding new venues and being in control of your career is because of an article that Jack Ladair wrote at the very back of this little book. See, it all comes full circle. This is what it's all about. You see, when Jack wrote the book, television had just started. It was a brand new thing, and it had so many possibilities for the future. And as someone who has made their living in television for many, many years, I find this article quite astonishing. Jack was looking at television from the perspective of a magician. And so I think what he says is quite prophetic. So I'm going to end the episode by reading this to you. I'm not going to comment on it. I'm just going to read it straight through. Just know that the Alexandra Palace is the place where the signal used to be sent from the early days of television in England. When he uses the word broadcasting, he's referring to radio. He's not referring to TV or film or anything else. Broadcasting is radio. It's very important to differentiate that. Also, remember that this article I'm about to read you, he wrote during the Second World War. I love the positivity of that. I love when he talks about when this war is over, here's what he thinks will happen. Not that the Germans are going to win, not that the Nazis will take over England. No, just once we get rid of Hitler, everything will go back to normal and everything will grow exponentially. And he's not wrong. So this is chapter 19 of Tricks of a Trooper, written by Jack Ladair. Past Masters. Titled, New Fields, Broadcasting Magic. Magic has been one of the few branches of entertaining which have, relatively speaking, been unaffected by the coming of wireless. The comedian, the singer, the instrumentalist have been and are being brought daily to the millions who are listening in. The magician remains unheard, even in Saturday night's music hall, since modern magic appeals so predominantly to the eye. This exclusion, even in the form of a running commentary, is not surprising. Some years ago, in the weeks just prior to Christmas, the methods of performing a number of small and simple tricks were described from a studio. Presumably, there was the hope that many a youthful enthusiast would write out or remember the directions given, and at a later date carry those directions into practice. As all those listening in were naturally in the know, one cannot but feel that if any budding conjurer got away with any of those tricks, he did so because of parental admiration and forbearance. In 1944, the BBC gave a review of magical history, reminding amateur and professional conjurers of many a famous name of the past, but of little else. The name of Devant means little to the young man of today, unless it is to be as a French adverb whose correct use he had some difficulty in mastering. To his elders, the name brings memories of a suave performer of miracles whom they never tired of seeing. They recall the ball that rolled uphill and the golf ball which was always hole in one. There is, I feel, little that broadcasting can do for the magician, unless it is to revive and renew sentimental memories. The amateur conjurer cannot get from the above type of programs the help that an amateur singer can from the broadcast of a professional. There is the other side, of course. A comedian's gags are less secure on the air than a magician's tricks. More recently, a card trick was broadcast on a transatlantic tie-up, the performer being in this country and the spectator being in the States. For this to be genuine and appreciated by those listening in, the spectator must unconsciously disclose the name of a key card before the conjurer can name the one chosen. In the spring of 1945, the BBC included a conjurer in one of its weekly programs, Navy Mixture. Over a period of months, the radio twister has, week by week, described how to do a number of tricks or solve a number of puzzles. Cards, coins, and matches have been used, and there have been given a number of very simple mathematical puzzles. This successful feature proves the avidity with which a studio audience and the listening-in public welcome a change from singers, comedians, and orchestras. Much of what has been termed pocket magic is suitable for this type of presentation, and I can think of many a publicity item which the late Theo Anneman gave us in the Jinx that could be broadcast. There is, however, one fact to remember. The listening-in public numbers millions. And once a secret has been disclosed, even if it's not recalled in detail, a subsequent performance would doubtless be met with, "Oh, I heard that on the radio." The successful broadcasting conjurer of the future will have to solve the problem of how to broadcast magic without disclosing secrets. Television. Early in 1945, a prominent daily paper announced the imminent return of regular television broadcasts, not only from the Alexandra Palace, but from 4 regional stations in England and 1 in the south of Scotland. This announcement should prove of interest to amateur and professional magicians, for, within limits which are worthy of consideration, a new avenue is open to them where they may display their talent. The unavoidable drawback of broadcast conjuring, that it cannot be seen except by the studio audience, is overcome. In 1938-39, the official range of reception from the Ali Pali service was 30 miles, but in actual practice, good results were obtained in many directions from the transmitter up to 50 or 60 miles. After the war, and I am writing before the piping days of peace have come, the reliable range can confidently be expected to increase due to technical improvements. When the anticipated regional transmitters or relay stations are erected and working, most of the populated areas of the British Isles should be covered. Unless there is any general inflation, I am informed the future cost of sound and vision receivers should be about the same. The new sets should give better results. As the technique of televising improved before the war, actors' makeup was gradually modified, and the excessively bright lights and green grease paint of the early days had practically disappeared by 1939. Colors and unusual makeup were mainly employed to ensure detail in reception, and as detail in transmission and reception improved, the actor gradually became more normal in appearance. Reception was, of course, in monochrome, but with a range from darkest black to lightest light, just as in photography. Color television has already been demonstrated by Baird, and although it will introduce a complication to both transmitting and receiving equipment, it can be expected to follow black and white television. In this respect, the development of television will follow the lines along which the cinema came from its early days to current Technicolor. It's unlikely that color television will be used to any great extent immediately that peace comes, but there is just the possibility that it may be incorporated in the newest receivers. In general, television is very similar to the cinema, and in the post-war years it will give results equal to the cinema, at least on a small screen in the home. Incidentally, a small screen viewed from an armchair 3 or 4 feet away is equivalent to the large cinema screen 30 feet distant. Pre-war screens of approximately 10 inches by 8 inches or 10 inches by 12 inches will be supplanted by newer ones measuring 18 inches by 12 inches. Close-ups are usual, and movement has the same speed as viewed in the cinema. My magical friends may have wondered at this short excursion into the realms of science. Yet these same realms of science will impinge very closely on the future realms of entertainment. There is here a new sphere in which the magical fraternity should have an honored place, and in which, if its members are progressive, they will be welcomed. With sight given to the listening thousands, the conjurer will come into his own. We listen to an operatic singer rather than criticize his looks and physique, but we must see the conjurer to judge his prowess. My own view is that the televising of magical effects will call for much additional forethought on the part of the magician. The absence of color will in some measure circumscribe the effects which would otherwise be successful, but despite this, however, there are a host of good magical effects which do not depend on color for their success. It'll be as well to remember too, what is more important, that the viewer at a set will see a program on a 2-dimensional screen. The occupant of a stall at the local music hall lives in a 3-dimensional world. An understanding of and an adaptation to the restrictions imposed by this new medium should present no insuperable difficulties to the modern magician. I cannot but feel that television offers us an important opportunity to bring our art attractively and more often to the thousands interested in it throughout the length and breadth of the country. Past masters. And so you see, my friends, change will always be there. We cannot stand still. We have to move forward. And it takes the enterprising entertainer, it takes the enterprising human being to find a way to make it work, to find new avenues. Don't give up. Know that the theater survived movies. Movies survived television. Television has survived the internet up till now. But what's next? Figure it out and go be successful. This has been another episode of Magicians Only, brought to you by yours truly, Mr. Steve Valentine. As always, Magicians Only is sponsored by Magic on the Go, magiconthego.com. If you want to learn magic, if you want to learn the secrets, if you want to learn to perform it, if it's a hobby, if you just want to learn the psychology of it, if you want to be able to amaze your friends, if you want to have something in your pocket that you can pull out that's legal, that you can do anywhere in the world, that you can break the ice with, that you can use at a business meeting, or that you can do a full evening show with, where else are you going to go? You're going to lug around a bunch of magic books, or you're going to let me go through them all for you and pick out the best things? That's Magic on the Go at magiconthego.com. Thanks very much for listening, and I will see you on the inside.